It's October, guys, which means it's time for the annual discourse on baseball's postseason format. The MLB playoff bracket has evolved a ton over the past 3 decades and has finally arrived at an expanded system where a dozen teams make the dance, the most in the history of the sport. Much has been said about the wildcard round, a 3-game series to kick off October baseball. Regardless of how you feel, this postseason format is likely here to stay as long as its predecessor did, which was the wildcard game. Throughout the 2010s, the playoffs began with a single-game elimination round between the 2 non-division winners with the best records in either league. It did produce some of the most unforgettable baseball in recent memory. The Edwin Encarnacion's monster walk-off home run versus the Orioles, the Kansas City Royals' improbable comeback from being down 7-3, the Pittsburgh crowd rattling Johnny Cueto into giving up a home run, Archie Bradley's go-ahead triple for Arizona, Juan Soto's go-ahead knock against Josh Hader, and my personal favorite, Ron Darling groaning in the booth as Aaron Judge hit an absolute tank at Yankee Stadium.
And a draw, deep left.
In the rich history of the now discarded wildcard game, it's very easy to forget that the introduction to this new format went about as poorly as you could imagine. A year after coming back from the grave to win the 2011 World Series, the St. Louis Cardinals returned to the playoffs as the first 5 seed in the history of the National League. They traveled to Atlanta to face the upstart Braves, who had finally clinched a berth after making the dance just once in their past 6 seasons. What should have been a clash of 2 of the most exciting teams in the entire league turned into a catastrophe of missed opportunities and umpire controversies. This is the story of the playoff game that MLB wants you to forget. The 2012 St. Louis Cardinals were undergoing a ton of change just months after hoisting their second trophy in 6 years' time. The first blow came almost immediately after they finished the job, where on Halloween of 2011, Hall of Fame manager Tony La Russa announced his retirement after 16 years with the organization. His presence had transformed the team's identity in the late 1990s, and he was able to bring his club to the brink of glory virtually every year of the 2000s, leading to World Series championships in 2006 over the Tigers and 2011 over the Rangers. He ended his tenure with the 3rd most wins of any manager in MLB history, and unlike some people, he stuck to his retirement. He really made it known that he was done with the game, no more controversies, no way to taint his legacy whatsoever. What's that? What do you... Oh. This wasn't the only large rift of leadership change in the St. Louis clubhouse either. A big reason why Tony La Russa won so many games with this club was the presence of their 3-time MVP winner, first baseman Albert Pujols. After over 400 home runs, a batting title, a pair of gold gloves, and 2 World Series rings, Albert Pujols departed from the club he played over 1,500 games with that offseason. But even without their best position player and their longtime skipper, the Cardinals still boasted a fearsome roster. Catcher Yadier Molina, fresh off his best season with a career high in home runs and batting average, returned for his 9th of 18 seasons in St. Louis. All-Star MVP candidate Matt Holliday was taking over as the big bat of the lineup. New blood entered the fold as well in Carlos Beltran, who signed a 2-year deal worth $26 million to try and replace Pujols' production. And there was certainly no World Series hangover for the Redbirds, who won 20 of their first 30 games to open the season with a convincing lead in the National League Central. But surprisingly enough, this would be the only time this season that they held possession of the first place spot, when a skid against National League East teams sent them into a tailspin. This team was snake-bitten with injuries for sure. They lost former Cy Young winner Chris Carpenter to thoracic outlet syndrome, which would make 2012 his final year as a big leaguer. Lance Berkman, a World Series hero from the year prior, suffered a torn meniscus, needing 2 surgeries in 1 year just to get right. The defending champs managed to pull things together, going 12-4 down the stretch against a soft schedule to thwart the Los Angeles Dodgers and sneak into the dance, outlasting their competition by just 2 games. Waiting for the Cardinals in that wildcard game was none other than the Atlanta Braves. The year before, those same Braves won 89 games in their bid to make the playoffs, but they fell just 1 game short of a berth, getting eliminated on the final day of the season like many other teams. That honor instead went to the St. Louis Cardinals, who of course went on to win the World Series after grabbing the wildcard spot. This made the 2 teams' eventual clash in 2012 all the more contentious. The team shed itself of underperforming veterans, but 1 key player of experience stuck around. That would be Chipper Jones. A longtime Atlanta third baseman announced that 2012 would be the final season of his Hall of Fame career, and even at 40 years old, Chipper didn't miss a step offensively or defensively. The lineup featured youngsters on the rise in Freddie Freeman and Jason Hayward. If the Braves had an Achilles heel, it was assuredly their starting rotation. Their bullpen on one hand boasted the 2nd best ERA of any unit in the league that year, held down by their feared 3-headed monster of Eric O'Flaherty, Johnny Venters, and former Rookie of the Year Craig Kimbrell. But their starting rotation ERA mark was nearly a full run higher, as the club fell into into some bad luck with untimely injuries. Jair Jurgens, who had been a stalwart for the team for a few years, underperformed and suffered a strained groin early in the year. They got a superb performance out of Brandon Beachy, but he went down with elbow surgery. Outside of the ever-reliable Tim Hudson and third-year southpaw Mike Minor, the story of the starting rotation became Chris Medlin, their swingman turned ace. In his 4th year as a big leaguer, on the rebound from Tommy John surgery no less, Medlin pitched to a superb 1.57 ERA in over 130 innings pitched. What's funny is that for most of the season, Chris Medlin pitched out of the bullpen and was only stretched out in the final 2 months of the year when Atlanta ran thin on starting pitching options. From July 31st to the end of the season, he allowed just 9 earned runs in 83 innings over the course of a dozen starts to wrap up his season. Of pitchers with at least 50 innings thrown in this final 2-month window, Medlin had far and away the best ERA at 0.97. Of pitchers with at least 130 innings on the year overall, Chris Medlin had the best ERA, walks and hits per innings pitched, and home run per 9 rate in baseball. Not only was he one of the best pitchers in the game that year, but his performance stands up historically as one of the best individual pitching campaigns in recent memory. In the last 50 years of MLB play, Chris Medlin is one of just 6 pitchers with over 100 innings thrown in a season with an ERA that was 150% better than league average, according to ERA+. He joins a group including Greg Maddux and Pedro Martinez. He was seriously that good. Before we go on, I gotta briefly interrupt today's video to thank today's sponsor, Mountain Dew. That's better. You know what we all need to do a little bit more of? Get off our ass. With bold flavors and a refreshing citrus kick, Mountain Dew will get you off your ass and feel like you're living on a mountain. A mountain where the weather is always perfect, your friends are ready to hang, and a day of epic proportions awaits. For me, when I'm outside, I like to take my cans of Mountain Dew and stack them up like they're a pyramid. You guys impressed by this? You guys like this? That's pretty cool. I mean, that's not nothing. The mountain is calling and you should answer. Grab your friends, grab an ice cold Mountain Dew wherever refreshing beverages are sold near you, and do the do. So logically, the Braves handed him the ball for their do-or-die wildcard game, making it his first career postseason appearance. But at the time, the decision was anything but surprising. Chris Medlin made them look wise for doing so, retiring the first 9 Cardinals hitters in order for 3 perfect innings and 4 strikeouts. One of those outs was this spectacular home run robbery by Jason Hayward, battling the sunlight in his eyes to get the game started with a bang. Their efforts were aided by future ex-Cubs manager David Ross, who pummeled this Kyle Loesch pitch to left center field for an early 2-run homer. Funnily enough, in a game that'd be defined by umpire controversy, there was a bit of funky umpiring here, too. Right before Ross's home run, he was granted timeout very late into Kyle Loesch's throwing motion, canceling out a pitch that otherwise would have struck him out. Instead, he was granted a second life and delivered the Braves a 2-run lead. Chris Medlin did surrender his first hit in the 4th inning, but quickly induced a tailor-made double play ground ball against Matt Holliday, but the Braves legend at the hot corner, Chipper Jones, would airmail the throw into left field, turning a potential 2-out nobody-on situation into a prime scoring opportunity for the Cardinals. St. Louis made the Braves pay for that mistake, stringing together a trio of hits to seize a 3-2 lead. So if you're keeping count, in 4 innings of this game, 5 runs have been scored, and you can make an argument that
1, 2, 3, 4.
None of them should have counted. Chris Medlin, on the other hand, would surrender this solo shot to Matt Holliday to open up a 2-run margin for the Cardinals. In the end, Medlin's final line of 6 1/3 innings with 2 earned runs allowed could have possibly been even better if not for Atlanta's messy 4th inning. The messiness didn't end there either, as a pair of misplays by the Braves infield gifted their opponent another unearned run. Then, a miscommunication between relief pitcher Johnny Venters and Freddie Freeman delivered the Cardinals another run, which gave them a 6-2 lead. So really, if the Braves played even just fine defense, they would be up 2-1 in this game. And I want this to be known because what's about to happen next will define this game as a whole, but the Braves had every chance to win this game. So that takes us to the 8th inning. The Braves had made it a 3-run game thanks to an RBI ground out the inning prior, and they begin to string together an unlikely rally. Freddie Freeman works an 8-pitch at-bat for a walk, and then David Ross punches his 3rd hit of the day to get the Braves 2 men on. Up steps Andrelton Simmons, looking to redeem himself with his error in the field. With 1 out, the youngster pops up a ball sky high into left field, which at first appears to be a total can of corn. But somehow, the ball drops between Pete Kozma and Matt Holliday, allowing the runners to advance for a bases-loaded setup for the Braves. And then chaos. For postseason games, MLB employs extra umpires in the outfield to help out with fairer foul calls, home run calls, and sometimes even crowd control. The extra umpire in left field for this game was Sam Holbrook, who was the only official on the field to signal the infield fly rule on this ball in play. As you can see, we're not in the infield. The infield fly rule is customarily called, well, on the infield, to protect offenses from getting caught in unavoidable double plays. If there was no rule for this, fielders could recognize runners who are returning to their bases, then let the fly ball drop untouched to force the runners to advance and grab a couple of cheap outs. This rule doesn't apply to balls in the outfield, since an outfielder wouldn't have enough time to get the ball back to the infield for the double play, even if they did drop the ball purposely. What makes this call worse, outside of it being horrifically incorrect in a very important game, is that the Cardinals had no intention for this ball to drop in the first place. Even if Pete Kozma does drop this ball on purpose, which he said on record that he didn't, there's zero chance he can collect it and turn two in any capacity. The Braves, who had paid dearly for their mistakes in the field many times throughout this very game, watched their one chance to flip the script get stripped away from them for no reason. Meanwhile, Atlanta's fan base begins to cover Turner Field with empty beer bottles and trash, continuously lobbing debris onto the field in aggression towards a potentially season-ending missed call. Also, in one of the best cases of great idea, poor execution that I've ever seen, the MLB Twitter account decided to poke some fun at the situation, saying, hey, we don't really understand the rule either. And people got really mad. This was before people were always mad on Twitter too. This debacle resulted in a near half-hour delay of game in the midst of the Braves' best rally of the night, which obviously killed any momentum that they might have gotten going. The Cardinals' best reliever, Jason Mott, walks Brian McCann to load the bases, a walk that could have scored a run. Instead, up steps Michael Bourne as the go-ahead run in a 6-3 ball game. Bases loaded, 2 outs, a chance to make this controversy a footnote in the game. Instead, a deflating strikeout and a chorus of boos from the Braves faithful. From here, it seemed as though the end result had already been set in stone. Chipper Jones and Freddie Freeman did their best to spark a late rally by bringing up Dan Uggla as the game-tying run with 2 outs in the 9th, but it was all for naught. A slow ground ball to second base would end the first ever wildcard game with a victory for the Cardinals and a crushing defeat for Atlanta, who might have been cheated out of MLB history by a faulty umpiring crew. In short, the first wildcard game ever was a sloppy mess full of errors from the players, the umpires, and the fans. Those 2012 St. Louis Cardinals took their second life and ran with it, disposing of the NL East champion Washington Nationals in the NLDS, then seizing a 3-1 lead in the NLCS against the Giants. Luckily for the sanity of Braves fans everywhere, the magic ran out here as the Giants stormed back in that 7-game series with 3 consecutive victories to advance to the World Series. The passage of time has helped cover up one of the most infamous games in MLB history, but when you're a baseball video essay creator like myself, your job is to get the Swiffer, dust off the game, and bring the story back to light, for better or for worse. But that'll do it for me in this video, and I'll see you guys next time.